Hi everyone, it's MrMostDaysOff from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into our podcast and also let you know of 3 additional ways you can help out the show. First, you can find and buy our merchandise at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. You can also support our sponsors popthreads.com for all your other t-shirt needs and use our discount code Simpsons at checkout. And finally, you can find us on patreon.com. Thank you again so much for listening to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and please enjoy this week's podcast. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by 2 dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today I am refusing to let my favorite holiday die. We are keeping the spirit of Halloween alive by reviewing Treehouse of Horror 4. And we've got another great guest joining us today, but first, as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm a little terrified today. I'm remembering as a child watching some of these shorts where parts of it really bothered me as a kid. But, you know, we'll get into that as fast as possible, or if Miles is going to keep talking, as slow as possible. I'll go ahead and throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the mule that won't walk in the mud, so we had to put 17 bullets in him. It is Miles.
And I'm still coming for you, bro. But first, let's go ahead and introduce the other voice you're going to be hearing today. She represents Memphis, the indie music scene there in Memphis, Tennessee. The stoner princess herself, Brittany Braddock. Welcome to Best Darn Diddly, Brittany. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Hey, everybody.
Brittany, we always start the same way with every guest and say, tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to The Simpsons.
Well, I'm as old as you guys, so I was around, when they first started coming on and watched it every Sunday with my entire family. But I am actually working on a Treehouse of Horror Simpson sleeve. So I have like a whole arm that's bare, and it's going to be all Simpson Treehouse of Horror things.
That'll be exciting.
I think that might somewhat answer what was my next question was going to be, is what was it about Treehouse of Horror that you specifically requested to come on for this episode?
Since I've been planning this tattoo, that is all that I've been watching for like a year now. But I am done with the planning stages, and I go in to get my artist to start drawing this week.
That's awesome. Do you want to shout out your artist?
Oh, yeah, Eric Cooley. You can find him on Instagram at Eric Cooley.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, we'll be excited for you to post those when you get that done, and of course we'll retweet them for you. Let's talk a little bit about Memphis, because I really love the name for what it's worth. I think that's really good marketing. Like, I feel like you got yourself a great brand there. So tell us a little bit about what you do with Memphis.
Well, that was, we thought of the word Memphis just like really drunk one day, and we were like, that's going to be a great name for something. And we bought a website, and I made it. But then we came up with a t-shirt design. So, like, one of the first things we're selling now is a t-shirt, and it's like Rat Fink, but Elvis, like Fat Elvis on a riverboat. And we hired a tattoo artist to draw it, and Nate Parson drew it. He's on Instagram too. But so now we're selling t-shirts, and my husband's in a couple of bands, Powers That Be and Legion of Divine Punishment. And we sell their band stuff. I'm working on getting more local bands to just have a place to sell their t-shirts and CDs.
Very cool. So it's basically just bringing the local indie music scene together. Is that kind of the overall idea behind the brand?
It's going to be artists too. Like I'm talking with a couple of painters that are going to sell some art on there, and t-shirt designs and music.
Just putting Memphis on the map in a most famous way.
Very good.
Getting them to do some Simpsons art too, perhaps.
Oh, I have lots of t-shirt ideas coming.
Very cool, very cool. Maybe we can talk about that. Get something for Best Darn Diddly in the works, because I suck at visual arts. It's not my skill set at all. Thank God for Toby from the Secret Transmission podcast, because he does all of our logo work for us, and he is fucking genius. So while we're doing all the loving and festivals and whatnot, let's shout out to Toby, because he's great. So let's go ahead and move on to The Simpsons. We are talking about Treehouse of Horror 4 today, which originally debuted on October 28th, 1993. This one does not have a traditional opening credit, so there is no chalk gag. We still get a couch gag in a really fun way, but we also get something else I haven't been able to talk about in quite some time, and that is a first appearance. We meet Uter, the German-loving, or the chocolate-loving German kid on the bus later.
He probably loves Germans, too.
Yeah, he probably also loves Germans, but we do get a very awesome opening credit scroll. It's actually a spooky Springfield cemetery where we see graves such as Elvis, Accept It, a balanced budget, which is way too appropriate for today's times, subtle political satire, and TV violence, which I love. It actually gets shot full of bullet holes that start bleeding right before we pan to the Simpsons' home.
Oh.
The couch gag on this one has the Simpsons in the form of zombies crawling through the floor and then taking their spots on the couch in the traditional manner before we get another thing we absolutely love about the Treehouse of Horror specials, the names themselves, of the spooky names of all the various people that work on the show. Did any of you catch any of that specifically jumped out to you on this one?
Well, did you notice that the boat was sinking in the painting behind the couch?
No, that's really cool. I like that. I guess that's why they had to replace it with the dogs playing poker later.
Yeah, I like all the stuff they did with the paintings in this episode.
No, that's a really cool cool observation. I did not notice the boat is sinking. How many times did you watch this episode? Is it more than me?
Possibly.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, when you're trying to think of... I'm trying to get like one thing from every season, at least. And then trying to get one of all the characters that I love the most, it has been insanely hard.
Who are some of your favorite characters on the show and some that you definitely want to feature in your tattoo?
Bart is on there like 5 times. Like, he's obviously my biggest crush. I can tell you from the first 4, since you've already done those without me, the very beginning of the tattoo is going to be the UFO with the double tractor beam picking up Homer.
Nice.
So that's at the top. Actually, at the bottom is the cemetery with the Springfield fence and graves, and then it goes to a spooky tree at the elbow, and it's sky stuff. And then the very top's the UFO picking up Homer.
Where have I seen the aliens recently at, Miles?
Are you talking about Kane or Kring?
Kane and Kudos.
He likes to screw up their names.
I also really love wrestling and the Ninja Turtles, so to drive Richie crazy, I'll often use the name Kane, which is a professional wrestler, or Krang, which is the villain on TMNT, so it bothers him. He also loves how I pronounce nuclear. So, I actually really love the wraparounds that they do on this episode. You guys already talked about it a little bit, but the opening of this episode actually takes place in an art gallery. And Bart's walking throughout all the paintings and talking about how it's going to be an evil, scary night. And Marge actually has to come in and remind him, like, honey, you need to remind people this might be too scary for them. In fact, some of you might want to even tune into NPR and listen to that War of the Worlds thing again.
Yeah.
I love that.
The beginning of that is actually a TV show, like a ripoff of Night Gallery.
Yes, yeah, totally. They talk about that just a little bit in the director's commentary on this one. It's unusual angles for that show, but that was absolutely the inspiration for this. And they actually used a lot of parody, or I guess homage, to really famous artists that we could talk about a little bit here in a little while as well. But let's go ahead and get into the first story of the Trio of Terror. This one has to do with Homer and the devil. First of all, let's just go ahead and jump right to it. Ned Flanders, greatest devil in television history. I can't think of a better one off the top of my head.
That's the Ned that will be in the sleeve, in the tattoo.
I think you should do the one from the second video, actually, where the second story, where he's just a head with a spine hanging out. That'd be pretty dope.
And I was doing this with interactions on Twitter recently, where like I think it logically makes sense that Ned Flanders is the devil. And I don't just mean in the Treehouse of Horror sense, but I mean like through the entire series sense. It would make so much sense that he lives next door to Homer. To maybe the Simpsons are already in hell, or the purgatory theory that everyone talks about. but the devil is there to drive Homer crazy all the time. And it just makes so much sense when you think about it.
It really does. He's got that he's too good to not be a little bit evil, if that makes sense.
And then Hurricane Nettie kind of brings it out of him a little bit.
Oh, that's it. I think we're getting to that one actually pretty soon. It's like a season away, I believe.
Well, and sometimes the worst ones make it the best.
That's true. Absolutely.
There you go.
So this one actually opens up, though, on a dream sequence, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's Homer, who has somehow managed to find himself as I'm not sure if he was a guest or a judge or a member of the media, but he was at a fashion show. And it was no ordinary fashion show. It was like Homer's dream fashion show, because it was actually walking, talking, or I guess I don't know if they're talking, but they're definitely walking donuts who are taking the catwalk. And I love they display this new one. It's a vision. Raspberry cream, and Homer declares, pure genius.
Fashion model.
I think it's great that Homer actually got a job he really loves. I mean, this has got to be way better than the power plant, right?
Well, he's had a job that he loved once before. Didn't he already work at the bowling alley for a day?
I think that happened. And then there was that time he was a barbershop singer, but that didn't last long either.
Yeah, it's because he won a Grammy. I mean, who wants one of those?
And unfortunately for Homer, this dream sequence doesn't last too much longer either, because he's awoken at work where he's actually at the power plant he hates. At least he can make this leap from a dream to reality, and he goes over to the break room where he's going to grab some donuts. Only Lenny and Carl have some pretty bad news.
Sorry, Homer. While you were daydreaming, we ate all the donuts.
Well, there were a few left, but we chucked them at an old man for kicks. And then you just see Abe Simpson running in terror from donuts being shucked at him, and he's fighting off birds, screaming, I ain't dead yet!
Chocolate-covered grandpa.
But it's okay. I know this seems scary to everyone, that Homer doesn't have donuts, but he has made an emergency plan, and he is going to execute it. He runs back to where his station is, and he pulls out the emergency procedures manual. But when he opens up this giant book, you see there's actually a hole cut in place for a donut, much like you might see a gun cut out in other films or TV shows. Only it seems like this isn't the first time Homer has encountered this issue, because all he finds in that slot is one IOU, and it actually reads, Dear Homer, I owe you one emergency donut. Signed, Homer.
That bastard, he's always one step ahead.
So I haven't talked at all about this yet, but I want to go ahead and say that this director's commentary was really, really loaded. It had a ton of people talking on it because there is a huge amount of writers. Being as it's a Treehouse of Horror, they all write the individual segments separately. So this had Matt Groening, Dave Merkin, Jim Brooks, Jim Daniels, David Silverman, Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, and because it was the last episode that he ever contributed to on The Simpsons, or I shouldn't say that because he guest stars in another one, but the last one he ever wrote, Conan O'Brien's last writing credit is on Treehouse of Horror 4, and he was actually responsible for the wraparounds in the art gallery that we already declared we like so much.
Oh, that's cool.
Point for me, I guessed that one. I didn't know that.
Nice. I'm glad you're in the mood for keeping points. I've got something special lined up for you two later. We'll get there in in just a little while. So, this is the pivotal moment in the first sketch. After Homer is bamboozled by past Homer, he declares, I'd sell my soul for a donut.
Well, that can be arranged.
What? Flanders? You're the devil?
It's always the one you least suspect. Now, many people offer to sell their souls without reflecting on the grave ramifications.
Do you have a donut or not?
Coming up, just sign here. Careful, hot pen.
And then I love you see Burns and Smithers watching through their monitors, as they often do, and then Burns is great here.
Who's that goat-legged fellow? I like the cut of his jib.
It's the Prince of Darkness, sir. He's your 11 o'clock.
I tweeted that this morning and someone DM'd me to correct my spelling.
Oh, fuck those people. You know how hard it is to type on a fucking cell phone? Get over it.
It's alright, Miles misspelled it in his in his notes too, I think.
No, I didn't. I have spell check on this motherfucker now. I'm all fancy and shit using a computer now instead of my sloppy handwritten notes that I could never read. There's more than one occasion where I had to sound out what I thought my note said, and Richie could actually accurately guess what I was trying to write down is the amazing part, because we basically are an old married couple at this point.
By the way, Jib is not GIB, it's JIB.
Oh, suck it, nerd.
Hey, you said that you had it right with the spell check. So.
I thought it was jig. I was way off.
Yeah, I think it was cut of his jib. Yeah.
Cut of his jib, yeah, that's an old saying.
Yeah. So, the deal is done. Homer signs for Flanders' donut. It's delivered. And Flanders, while he's eating it, though, it might be the mistake of the episode, because Flanders actually reminds Homer that as soon as he finishes that donut, the devil will now own his soul forever. But Homer realizes that means if he doesn't finish it, then the devil doesn't get his soul. I'm smarter than the devil. I'm smarter than the devil. Flanders goes absolutely beast mode here, and apparently I did not catch this myself, but the commentary said that this animation for this brief moment was actually an homage to Fantasia by Disney.
I could totally see that, yep.
I love, though, the little flash of just normal Flanders' face in the, like, giant demon beast right before it goes back to hell. That was brilliant.
Well, I have a lot of questions about the contract here, because what happens if Homer just throws out the donut? What happens if Homer gets somebody else to eat the donut and it's not him himself?
Or, like, a bird eats it, or, like, it decomposes. There's a lot of ways that donut could be gone, essentially.
Yeah, but it says that when you finish the donut, he didn't say anybody else couldn't finish it.
I would have to get a lawyer, not Lionel Hutz, but an actual good lawyer to look over that contract and see if there's a way out.
But it did seem like a long contract. Like, he just probably said a little bit, but he signed something.
Yeah, you know how those evil corporations are. They're all ran by the devil, and they all have a ton of fine print that doesn't make sense even if you take the time to read it.
You're all going to be put into a human semi-pad eventually, right?
Exactly. That's how it works. That is how it works. So, Homer has a surefire plan that he will absolutely not lose that last bit of donut. He puts it in the fridge, uncovered, with just a bunch of little post-it notes that say things like, "Do not eat Daddy's soul donut," and things like that. And of course, there's two absolutely great things that happen right here that I just really, really love. First of all, Homer, of course, is his own worst enemy. He comes down in, like, sleep zombie mode, and he, in fact, eats the last bite of donut, despite all of his carefully written hand notes, and the fact that there was, like, 7 other great options of snack in the fridge already. He didn't need the donut. He could have gone anywhere.
I got really hungry watching that scene, honestly.
It was a really, like, yeah, I'm like, man, I wish I would have eaten already, but we'll get there after this. But I love 2 of these things that happen right here. First of all, when they try to pull Homer down into hell, he actually gets stuck because he's too fat, but Flanders literally says, your wide behind won't save you this time, Simpson.
Hey, Bart.
Great evil, and that's that simple line, that casual "Hey Bart" is probably my favorite line, and it might be number 2, but it's in the top 2 for certain. Such a casual reference,
only surpassed by the fact that Bart just goes, "Hey."
That whole sequence is what I mean. The devil and Bart are just so tight,
familiar with each other.
It's fucking brilliant.
There's a lot of episodes where Bart and Ned are just like buddy, or just like casually say something like, "Hey." One of the patients that flew off into hell from the refrigerator was Bart. He got an F+.
Yeah, and they put it on the fridge.
Yeah.
Usually just gets the standard F, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's important to show improvement even if it's incremental. But Lisa does point out that in America, he is entitled to a fair trial, and Ned actually gets really mad. He's like, this never happens in Mexico. At the end of the day, Ned does agree that he's going to give him the trial tomorrow night at midnight. But first, Homer is going to spend the day in hell. And then we see how hot dogs are made. I love they actually, when he arrives, he like lands on first of all, there's this other great shot of him falling, and like the background is all spirally, and it's this great like transformation of him actually falling into hell. And when he gets there, he lands on a conveyor belt where he's immediately sliced into pieces, and they take his basically his mouth and his feet, and they toss it into the hot dog parts bucket.
That makes sense.
It really does, actually. But then again, Brittany made fun of me for eating a McRib the other day, but she's totally not wrong. That thing is in no way healthy or good for me, but it's not my fault.
Bone shape in it? Like it's shaped like with a bone in it?
Oh yeah, it's like it's like the chicken nuggets are pressed essentially kind of like cookie cutters. Yep. Delicious fake meat shapes. I'm down.
Hey, if they made a Simpsons episode based off of it, it can't be bad for you.
Well, I was about to say all you need is that Szechuan sauce, but once again, Simpsons beat me to that joke because they just ripped on Rick and Morty with that this last weekend, which I thought was fucking great.
I like that Dan Harmon actually liked it too.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's great when honestly, it's like we said when we were talking with Carolyn Omine. Like our life goal is to get made fun of by The Simpsons. So if I saw us getting spoofed, I would lose my goddamn mind and tell everybody they made fun of me. They made fun of me. It reminds me of a story Kevin Smith tells when he saw himself getting he was made fun of twice on Entourage, and he basically, his wife was like, you should be embarrassed by that, and he's like, what are you talking about? I just got talked about on Entourage. This is great. After we see Homer dismembered, he somehow gets put back together in time to go to Hell's Ironic Punishment Division. And this is fucking fantastic, and probably the most iconic scene, definitely from this episode, but possibly one of the most iconics in Treehouse of Horror history. Homer is on a machine designed to feed him just way too many donuts. Like
all the donuts of the world.
Yes, like just nonstop.
More.
Exactly. That's all Homer says the entire time, to the point where they Actually run out, and Homer is still declaring more.
Ironic how that ironic punishment didn't work.
I don't understand it. James Coco went mad in 15 minutes. Which James Coco is actually an Academy Award nominated character actor, but he died in the 80s, so he had not been around for a while at the time that this joke was made, but he was actually quite beloved by everyone, so it's just one of those funny names they pull out of the hat type of jokes, I'm guessing. This whole concept was actually ripped off or parodied from an old Porky Pig cartoon, where essentially the same thing happened. Porky was fed I don't know what it was in the original cartoon, but something that he, ate way too much of in order to get him to hate it or whatever. And they just changed it to donuts and Homer, and it worked perfectly. They decide Homer spent enough time in hell. I mean, they can't torture him with donuts. They don't really have a lot of other options. So they decide to put him on trial. They go back to the Simpsons' home, where Homer actually appears in a fire cage, which is pretty great. And then Lionel Hutz approaches with another great line. Mr. Simpson, there's no need to worry. I caught an episode of Matlock last night at the bar. The sound wasn't on, but I think I got the gist of it.
That's my favorite line in this episode.
That's a really strong contender, honestly. Anything Phil Hartman is always funny. That guy, I'm dreading when we get to the point where we lose him in the show. I mean, obviously we all had to deal with losing him in real life a long time ago, but it's almost going to be like reliving it, I think, once we get there on this show. And I'm frankly dreading that. That's the only thing I don't look forward to, and I think ahead on this podcast.
It was funny, to take it back to a funny note, that he was combing his hair with a fork, too, while he was
Yes. Way to save it. The Grim Reacher? The Grim Reaper actually appears as the judge and announces court is in session, but Lionel Hutz has done this before. He knows a thing or two about lawyering, and he's got a few ground rules he wants Ned to agree with. He says that they are going to get a break every half hour. Agreed. And I get to pick the jury.
Agreed.
No. Wait. Too late. So Ned presents the jury of the damned.
This part sucks for us, Miles.
Yeah.
We could have won a trivia night if we would have just been smarter Simpsons fans.
Yeah, we did, in fact, come out not on top, we'll say, because I don't want to say we lost, because that just sounds cruel, but true.
We were in the top
But we lost it. Yeah, we did not win a Simpsons trivia night, and this was actually the final question, was name the jury of the damned, and we fell short compared to another table.
I thought they named everybody but the 1976 Philadelphia Flyers.
No, the people that won named fucking everything, and I'm still convinced they had Google in their pocket, but hey, you know what? Maybe they're just better Simpsons fans than I am.
No, don't say that. Come on now.
Who is Benedict Arnold?
Benedict Arnold was a famous soldier in U.S. history that essentially betrayed, I believe it was George Washington. Yeah.
The American Revolution, yeah.
And who are the Flyers? Did, like, the whole team die, or what happened?
So that was just a joke at the fact that the 76 Flyers were a very notorious, aggressive team. They're known as being hard asses and, like, the type of, like, I mean, honestly, it's like an old school hockey mentality where, I mean, they were going to stick together and fuck anybody up who got in their way, but they didn't just leave that on the ice. They are also notorious for bar brawling and even at times getting in altercations with various fans. So that's why they were named. Other names were Lizzie Borden, Nixon, who was not dead at the time that this was made, but it's actually kind of mean how they have this written on IMDb. I'll just say this. He died 176 days after this episode aired. On IMDb, they have it written as Richard Nixon would actually enter the devil's clutches 176 days after this episode aired.
Wow.
That's harsh. I mean, you know, yeah, probably deserving, but I don't really know. I mean, it seems a little harsh to me.
What I like is that Blackbeard is a part of the group.
Who else was there? It was Blackbeard, and then John Wilkes Booth, John Dillinger, and then the 76 Flyers. A joke that was cut that I thought would actually have been really funny. They left a ton on the cutting room floor on this one because they just were so strained for time. But whenever they introduced John Wilkes Booth, he sat down behind John Dillinger, and Dillinger stood up and said, "I don't want him sitting behind me." Which would have been great. It doesn't seem like it takes that much time, but they unfortunately had to cut that one.
Well, I was trying to find something, and there's a whole scene they talked about that wasn't in my episode, and y'all haven't talked about it, so y'all didn't see that scene either. But it's some scene where, like, Bart was trying to sell his soul to the devil for a Formula One car, and Marge was looking for lawyers in the phone book, and it explained why Homer had his head cut off when he was in the cage. It was like another hell scene.
I don't remember that one specifically, but I did read about a bunch of deleted scenes, and actually at least a couple of them we're going to actually get to see at some point, because the one that I actually remember that I was like, wow, I feel like there's a scene missing, was the deleted scene where they're playing bowling in hell, and they actually use Homer's head as the bowling ball, and I believe whenever his head hits the pins, like his skull pops open, it says, "I owe you one brain," or something like that. Basically, that was also on the cutting room floor, but a bunch of these scenes are going to be shown on the 138th special that they do, the one hosted by Troy McClure that we've talked about a little bit in the past. We'll be a ways away from that one, but it won't take too long to get there. That one could very well be included in that as well. I do not know.
Well, I want to see it.
Well, Oakley Dokley.
My favorite part about this whole Jury of the Damned scene is actually Marge, though, because despite the fact that you've got all these terrible people in her living room, she's still trying to be just like a good host. She's offering everybody a chair, and when she gets to Blackbeard, she only has Maggie's high chair left, so she's like, "I'm sorry, sir, this is all I have." "Aye, this chair be high," says I. Ned presents his case to the court, and honestly, it seems like his contract is pretty straightforward. It seems that Homer does in fact owe Ned one soul. However, Lionel Hutz is on the scene. "That was a right pretty speech, sir, but I ask you, what is a contract? Webster's defines it as an agreement under the law that is unbreakable. That is unbreakable." He then realizes his mistake and flees to the bathroom.
"Excuse me, I'll be right back."
We see an hour pass by on the clock before Marge goes and knocks on the door to discover that he most likely fleed out the open window. The judge is ready to declare Ned the winner and to give Ned Homer's soul, but Marge has one last piece of evidence that she wants to submit to the court. Their wedding photo album. And we see a classic Simpsons style of flashback photo because it's Marge and Homer in their wedding attire, but sitting in an emergency room. It turns out that Homer ate the entire wedding cake before the wedding actually started.
Which explains why Marge makes practice cakes in the future.
That's true. She learned her lesson. But while everybody on the jury is laughing, Marge is like, no, turn the photo over.
'Tis some kind of treasure map.
Blackbeard can't read.
You idiot, you can't read. Aye, 'tis true. My debauchery was my way of compensating.
Everybody reads the back of the card other than Blackbeard, of course, and they discover that Homer actually pledged his love, his heart, and his soul to Marge on their wedding day. So, the foreman of the jury, Lizzie Borden, declares they have no choice but to say the owner of Homer's soul is indeed Marge Simpson, and Ned will not get his way. But he still gets the last laugh in a pretty awesome way, because he said to Homer before he goes back to hell, "May that ill-gotten donut forever be on your head." And when we flash to the next morning at the breakfast table, we realize that was literally true. He turned Homer's head into a donut, and of course, in classic Homer Simpson style, he's picking at it, eating it, and when Marge tells him to stop, it's like, "But I'm so sweet and tasty." Homer's about to go to work, and Lisa's like, "No, Dad, don't go outside." And they pan to the front yard. It's just nothing but all of Springfield cops waiting with their coffee for Homer to come out.
Don't worry, boys. He has to come out sometime.
And that brings us to the end of Homer and the Devil.
Dr. Hibbert had a badass afro in that picture, too.
He did, yes.
I love Dr. Hibbert's hair in all the flashback sequences because it's always done up in some wild style from like the 70s or early 80s. So let's go ahead and move on then to Terror at 5.5 Feet, which is a excellent parody. And this is something that they've been doing a lot of lately, but they've been doing it so well. I'm really glad it keeps working. This is a parody of the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and a little bit of the Twilight Zone movie, but they did confirm that in the commentary it was mostly William Shatner's performance and only just a couple of scenes of John Lithgow. But yeah, Shatner, which I actually rewatched that episode of the Twilight Zone, and there's some scenes that are absolutely shot for shot, and it's fucking great. It starts out with Bart and Milhouse trading crusty cards, when suddenly a wheel on the school bus goes off the axle and it causes Otto to swerve into a semi-truck, explodes, and presumably everyone dies. But what ends up happening is Bart snaps awake, and this is yet another dream.
Can we say Simpsons did it again?
The next joke that's coming up right here?
No, I'm talking about how they gave all the Final Destination movies the idea for their movies.
Oh. Nice. Yeah, that's true.
That was also the beginning of Reno 911.
You know you're driving, right? Did anybody catch the next joke here? Am I the only one that got, like, that this was super dirty? Or is that what that was? Because Bart says after he wakes up, he kind of feels his blanket and he says, "Oh, I hope that's sweat."
I'm talking about pee, Miles.
Oh. I was thinking, like, he's at that age where things might start happening. I don't know.
The 4th grade or the 3rd grade, whatever grade Bart's in. You just blew my mind.
Hey, some of us
I can't remember
young,
anything anymore.
P makes a lot more sense. I just have a dirty mind.
And we're canceled.
It happens a lot. The next day at breakfast, Marge assures him it was just a scary dream. The scary part's over, and everyth's going to be fine. But then Homer comes in blaring a foghorn, or an air horn that sounds exactly like the semi-truck's horn did in the dream sequence. And I love what Homer says there. He's like, "Hey, I got all this stuff for free down at the marina. It was just sitting in some guy's boat."
Like, what was he doing at the marina before breakfast?
That's a great question. Why does he assume that things that are in somebody's boat are free is another good one to consider.
It was the only idea they could come up with that made logical sense.
And there's it makes a lot of fun for the callback they do towards the end of this one as well.
Yeah.
Bart and Lisa this time board the bus for real, and it's not a dream, it would seem, but they do see Principal Skinner is on the bus. "Hello, Simpson. I'm riding the bus today because Mother took my keys to punish me for talking to a woman on the phone. She was right to do it."
Like, why did he just volunteer all that information to a 3rd grader?
Dude, the stuff with Skinner and Skinner's mom, I mean, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg right now, and it gets so much darker from here. It's probably the greatest ongoing parody of Psycho that ever has been.
I didn't like what Lisa said here. She is the worst little sister ever.
Oh my god, how awful would this be?
Me so hard if I said that.
She basically tells everybody, Bart had a bad dream, so please take it easy on him today. And of course, they don't.
They start laughing immediately.
And Jimbo pulls down his pants and is like, where's your diaper, baby? Awful.
And don't we all want t-shirts like Martin has right here?
Wang computers. That's awesome.
Thank goodness he's drawn attention away from my shirt.
Bart is still visibly shaken from this dream that he had, and it actually gets worse because he looks out his window and he sees a monster on the side of the school bus. He tries to get Milhouse to look at the monster, but he refuses. After all, he doesn't want to leave himself open to wedgies, wet willies, or even the dreaded Rear Admiral, which...
Whoa.
We got to talk about the Rear Admiral real quick. First of all, we got to say...
It says Rear Admiral, ? Like, I don't know what this is.
Here's what's going to happen. I got a little game for you guys. First of all, let me say, when they wrote this joke, they were specifically looking for something that had no meaning, that was vague, that would sound like something along the lines of Purple Nurple or Wet Willy, things like that. And this is what they came up with, and it caused an absolute riot in the early days of the internet on the message boards that were existent at that time. Basically, everybody went crazy trying to figure out what the Rear Admiral was, and it did eventually come out that it really, at the time, had no meaning. However, in 2009, the website Urban Dictionary did add a second official definition of Rear Admiral, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's dirty. So before I reveal what the Rear Admiral actually is, I would like you both to describe to me, without Googling, just tell me what you would describe as a Rear Admiral. Richie, let's go ahead and start with you to give Brittany a little more time to think. I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's obvious what a Rear Admiral would be. It's two gentlemen, nicely dressed in some kind of army attire. Apologies to anybody who served. And one of them's bent over in front of the other one, while the person from behind salutes while they fondle their balls.
Are you sure you didn't Google this?
I'm absolutely sure.
Just fucking with
It makes the most sense.
All right, that's pretty good. Follow-up question, do you remember your first Rear Admiral?
Well, usually on the first time you black out, so no, I don't.
Fair enough. That was pretty good. It's not what Urban Dictionary says, though. I'll say that. So, Brittany, do your best shot at telling me what is a Rear Admiral.
Oh, boy. So, like, one guy is, like, saluting on his knees, but then, like, the other guy poops on his head.
So you both went military themed. I like that. I mean, it makes sense with the name. That's good. Is that the big finish? Just the poop on your head and it's over?
Well, and the other guy is masturbating.
Oh,
that's
okay.
like obvious.
That makes more sense. So here's what we're gonna do. I want to actually make this into a little bit of a contest. So I don't know if contest is the right word. I just want to get some participation. So I just happened to get in some fresh off the print Best Darn Diddly stickers. So what I want everyone who's listening to do is to write in. You can do it on Twitter at Best Darn Diddly. You can go bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page that I'll make sure that Richie actually checks for once. You can submit them there. Wherever you want to submit your definition of what you think a Rear Admiral is, and don't bother Googling it because I'm not going for whoever actually gets closest. I'm about to read the damn thing. I just want to get the funniest ones, and we're going to pick a couple of the funniest definitions of Rear Admiral, and I'm going to send you some Best Darn Diddly stickers. So send those in. We're going to read them on it's going to be weeks from now. I haven't picked a date yet, but it'll happen. We'll pick a date. We'll send those out. We'll read those definitions, and we'll send out some stickers to some of our favorites.
Looks like I just won some stickers.
So, the Rear Admiral, according to 2009's update of the Urban Dictionary, is while performing intercourse doggy style, the man pulls the woman's hands behind her back and attempts to thrust her around a room. A full circuit around the room will make you a Rear Admiral.
Oh, that was uneventful.
The definition, or I'm sorry, the example sentence that they provide is, you should have seen her knees after I earned my Rear Admiral. I think both of yours are better, frankly.
Hey, I got the doggy style part right.
Hey, and she had on her knees, so I think both of you get partial credit. Together, you basically figured it out.
Together, we achieved real admiral.
That's right. Her husband's gonna smash you in the face with a guitar, sir.
He didn't listen to podcasts. You're good.
Oh, awesome. All right, say whatever you want then. We're straight. But back to the episode, Bart is now seeing this little gremlin-like creature, which they describe on the commentary as part otter, part monkey, which is scary enough in itself. Bart can't get Milhouse to look, so he runs and grabs Otto and tells him there's a gremlin on the side of the bus. And another great visual gag, he looks in the rearview mirror, and sure enough, there is a gremlin. It's an AMC gremlin driven by Hans Moleman. It's in his his driver's side rearview mirror. So he's like, I'll take care of this. And Otto runs Hans off the road, and he's just barely able to avoid complete catastrophe by coming to a complete stop inches before he smashed into a tree.
Oh no, I just made my last payment.
But then his car explodes for no reason anyway, in classic Hans Moleman style.
Poor Mole Man.
I think we mentioned it already, but essentially what happened is they really did not like Mole Man the way he looked at first, so they decided to kill him off, but they like killing him off so much, they just keep bringing him back to do it over and over again, and it's become a reoccurring gag.
Kenny before Kenny existed.
Actually, in a lot of ways, they're very, very similar.
This would be Kenny, right? He would be born in, 92?
Well, as a character, he doesn't. That's interesting concept, though. I like your abstract thinking.
No, I thought South Park started in, I don't remember.
I think South Park started in, 97.
96 or 94?
I thought it was, 97. We'll have to look that up. Well, it's been on for, 20-something seasons, so I guess it would have had to been, 95, yeah. Alright, anyway, this is a show about The Simpsons, so we'll stay on focus.
For now...
Bart keeps seeing that monster destroy the bus bit by bit every time he looks out the window. But again, every time he tries to show somebody, there's no one there. I actually like when he gets everybody to rush to the windows to look. They kind of pan through and people are like, I don't see anything. And Ralph Wiggum says, you're deceptive. This great Ralph word for some reason, and kind of goes into something we're going to be talking about on the Throwdown Thursday podcast with Patsy the Angry Nerd coming up real soon, actually. We're recording that next week. It'll probably already be out by the time you hear that, so go check it out. We're going to be diving into in-depth discussion about Ralph Wiggum, and Richie and I have some ideas that we're excited to present, but we'll be doing that very shortly.
We won't fail English.
It's impossible. It's impossible. Damn it.
Never mind. We just failed.
I just suck. Yeah. For now, though, I love this little bit with Milhouse because Otto is actually looking out the window too, saying, "I don't see anything," and Milhouse is like, "Who's driving the bus? Uh-oh."
It's like, "Un momento, por favor." Like, is he learning Spanish in his headphones all day?
I don't know. I find that people that are very chilled and relaxed a lot of times will go into just casual Spanish phrasing, like when you're chilling out.
I guess I do that sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Without getting too specific.
It's because our weed comes from Mexico.
Okay, or to get real specific.
During this whole sequence, I love that they do this outer space flash that we talked about a little bit, where Kang and Kodos are there talking about the silly humans. Woo! And how they are so afraid of something that doesn't exist. And then that same monster appears on the outside of their spaceship and starts destroying it.
I don't think it's the same one. I think it's a completely different one of the same species, to be specific.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Richie.
No, that does make more sense. I agree. Otherwise, the one on the school bus has to be...
I'm terrified otherwise.
A lot. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Bart is still causing a scene because, after all, he's the only one noticing a real-life monster, and Skinner's finally going to do something about it. Now, I've gotten word a child has been using his imagination, and I've come to put a stop to it. The only monster on this bus is a lack of proper respect for the rules. Skinner actually lowers the screen on Bart's window, which, let's go ahead and just say, does not make any fucking sense at all. This is where they dive into extreme parody and are clearly referencing the Twilight Zone being on an airplane, because I have never seen a window screen on a school bus.
A pull-down screen, yeah.
Not once. And this is where you can really start to see a lot of the Shatner expressions with Bart's face that they do. It's a really, really well done parody. And probably one of the best moments is actually next when Bart just cannot help himself. So he opens the screen and staring back at him is Willie's face. And this is fucking perfect because the way Willie moves is exactly the same way. In the actual Twilight Zone episode, Shatner does this and the monster is actually staring at him face to face in the window. And Willie makes the exact same head movements that the monster does in the show, like beat for beat. It's perfect parody. Shot for shot. And then we get to how Richie introduced me, which I actually really love this line, but I won't do the Willie voice justice. So, Richie, take it away.
Me mule wouldn't work in the mud, so I had to put 17 bullets in him. No, I fucked that up, but you guys get the gist of it.
I put too much pressure on him, sorry. It takes warming up sometimes. Bart is finally at his wit's end. He's reaching out to Milhouse, just trying to keep at least his best friend by his side, but Milhouse is like, I'm gonna get out of here. You're kind of creeping me out. I'm gonna go sit with that foreign exchange kid. And that's where we get the first appearance of Ooter. According to the director's commentary, he was written for this one joke, and then they just really liked him, so they kept bringing him back. Seems to happen a lot with The Simpsons, to be honest.
Yeah.
Bart is actually all alone once again, and this time he actually sees the gremlin taking the wheel entirely off the bus. He shouts out, "Stop the bus or we're all going to die," and this is when Skinner has had enough. And Willie actually suggests we should tie him down.
That's what you always do with a kid.
They do tie him down at some point, don't they?
Yeah, they actually take Willie's advice right here, and they tie him up next to Ooter on the bus. Bart's able to befriend Ooter, though, by offering to lick his candy stick. Take that for what you will. Bart convinces Ooter to untie him, and then for absolutely no good reason at all, Ooter just walks away so that he can't be there to see the monster in the next sequence.
You can't get away with that now. Like, you can't just be tying kids up anymore.
That's bullshit. I thought this was America.
Exactly.
Bart gets the idea to use bus flares, which he finds under his seat, to fight off the monster, but unfortunately the bullies already lit them and stuffed him down Martin's pants. Bart grabs a flare out of Martin's pants. He accidentally knocks one down, so he takes a moment to replace it in Martin's waistline before going to fight off this monster.
Honestly, I think that's my favorite part of the episode.
Really, really, like, so fast, but such a big laugh. And this is once again where we get to total parody mode, because Bart pulls the emergency release exit on his bus window, and suddenly the bus acts as if it's pressurized, like an airplane, and everything is getting sucked out the window, including Bart, who is essentially dangling and trying to knock the monster off the wheel with that flare that he's just holding on to. Great bit here where Homer actually drives by. He can clearly see his son is in, like, dire, absolute terror of a situation, and he just honks his little air horn again, is like, "Hi, boy," and drives off.
I like the part with Willie and Skinner trying to pull Bart back in. When Skinner's yelling at Willie to pull, and he's like, "I'm doing all the pulling, you blouse-wearing poodle walker."
Yes. Willie has some of the best jabs at Skinner, and they're very quick a lot of times, so you have to pay attention to catch them, but that was a great one.
And ever since they told him to be more PG about it, it's he never uses bad words, but it sounds really bad when he says it all the time.
It's almost like when you see soccer fans from Europe who can swear just way better than us, but Willie can pull that off without actually swearing and still sound just, like, super intense. Bart does actually manage to knock the gremlin off the bus, and it's immediately ran over by Ned Flanders, who it's unclear if he's still the devil in this scene or not. He does declare, "Oh my lord, it's some sort of hideous monster." And then the monster, like, snarls and tries to swipe at him, and Ned, of course, is just like, "Aw, isn't that cute? He's trying to swipe my eyes out."
And this is one of the scenes, like, as a child, and the next scene that kind of, like, creeped me out at first. Like, actually seeing what happens to Ned. I mean, in 1993, I don't remember what grade I was in at the time. I think I was, like, 3rd grade.
We were 8 years old, so yeah, it's a pretty dark moment. And it was you know what? It was way better animated than Mortal Kombat was, and they made a damn bigger deal out of Mortal Kombat doing that exact same thing with the spine hanging off of someone's skull.
So Simpsons did that too. There's a lot of that in this episode. Wow.
Actually, Mortal Kombat might have preceded this episode, actually.
That might have been like 92.
Yeah, I think that might be right. Regardless, this one ends just like the Twilight Zone episode does, where when everybody gets off the bus, or in the airplane in the other case, but everyone gets out of the vehicle, and Bart finally gets to prove that he was right all along. He says, look at the bus, I was right all along, I tell you. But Skinner comes up and says, right or wrong, your behavior was still disruptive, young man. Perhaps spending your life in a madhouse will teach you some manners. Fit punishment, I suppose. And then this last scene is actually more of an homage to the Twilight Zone movie, because this part does not occur in the episode. But as Bart is tied up in his straitjacket and being sent off in an ambulance or whatever vehicle to go to the mental institution, he is just happy to finally get some rest. And that's when we see the monster appear on the back of the ambulance holding Ned's head, as we just discussed. In the movie, one of the drivers or one of the medics actually is the monster all along, but in this case, the monster just comes back to the ambulance.
Idly ho, Bart.
Nailed it. And that's how we scream to black on Ned Flanders' dismembered head. And we find ourselves back in the art gallery, getting ready to go upon our final story, our final painting. And this one's going to be the scariest yet. To even gaze upon it will drive you insane. And then Homer comes up, ooh, they're dogs, and they're playing poker. Ah!
We had a story to go with this one, but it was just too scary. So we threw something together with vampires.
This is how we open up on Bart Simpson's Dracula. And I have to say that this is actually the first segment, or I'm sorry, this is actually the most impactful segment, I should say, the one that stuck out to me most as a child, just because I had already seen the classic Universal monster movies by this point, but I believe this might have been the first Treehouse of Horror that I actually watched live as it aired. And the Dracula parody just has a lot of iconic scenes that really stand out to me, even though on the revisit, there's so much from the donut and the school bus that I now really like. As a kid, this Burns' Dracula really made an impact, especially when Bart's a vampire. He was my favorite character as a kid, so watching him grow fangs and turn into a bat was pretty crazy to see as a child.
Grandpa Vampire was a Burger King toy.
Oh yeah, that's right. I had some of those. I actually still have the Simpsons roasting on an open fire. No, that's the opener. I'm sorry. The Simpsons Wild. What's the one where they go out to the woods?
Call of the Wild.
Call of the Simpsons. Call of the Simpsons. That's what it is. Boom. I knew we'd get there.
No, I have all the Burger King ones. They're like in my office.
Oh, that's rad.
The top of the windows.
What are they? Give us some of your favorites.
Well, I have the scene as the grandpa is a vampire, but then I have Krusty as a vampire, I have Marge as a witch, Bart as a skeleton. I got like 3 Maggies up here.
Very cool, magical Maggie.
Yep.
Awesome.
This episode definitely got to me too. Like, as you were saying, watching Bart actually get like captured when he goes down the slide and you see all the vampires or zombies or whatever they are at that point. When he gets grabbed, that's the part that always disturbed me the most in this episode as a kid. Especially when you see him, the scene after, and he's got fangs. And that's what I was referring to at the top of the episode, where there are a couple parts in this little trio of things that got me. Like you said, I was 8 at the time, I think. So I did not like seeing Bart actually get captured and not win, kind of.
But he's so cute as a vampire.
But did you think that when you were 8?
Well, I smoked a lot of weed since then. I'm so surprised I don't remember, like, watching these.
Yeah, I guess weed just doesn't clear my memory. I don't know. I've always had a pretty good memory for pop culture. If only I could have brought that to the classroom. I actually blanked for a second. Sorry. See, I do that a lot. That's my voice. I actually, what you said, Rich, is really interesting because David Merkin talks a little bit about it on the commentary. Again, it was a really crowded commentary, and one of the voices was Conan, and he's always making way too many jokes to actually get any real information across. However, David Merkin was able to say that when he was showrunner, the Halloween episodes, it was really important to him that they remain scary. Like, he wanted them to be funny, but he wanted them to remain true to Halloween and remain scary. So it's interesting
Awesome.
that I agree, especially that slide, that happy fun slide image later, where Bart is sliding into this undead horde. It's a very intense scene for a young kid. I also really like, though, the transition going into the story from the art gallery. Like I said, they do the dogs playing poker, which, let's be real, that's one of my absolute favorite paintings of all time because I'm classy like that. In fact, I have a really awesome tattoo idea, I think. I'm excited about it. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it on my body yet, but I know I want it someday. I want to get the dogs... I want to get a tattoo of dogs playing poker, but instead of the dogs in the painting, I want them to be like famous television dogs. So, of course, it'd be like Santa's Little Helper, Scooby-Doo, Snowball from Rick and Morty... I'm sure there's a bunch of... one of them has to be Bender, the robot, of course, but he would be wearing dog ears, so, he would be scamming the table. But that is a tattoo that I'm absolutely getting before I die, assuming I don't die tragically and unexpectedly.
Like an entire chest piece.
Yeah, but then I'd have to show off my man boobs, and I'm not going to do that. Let's be real.
What's the part of your body you show off more than any other?
Yeah, but I'm also too honest. I'll admit it won't fit there. There's like 5 dogs, dude. Come on, man. But anyway, it pans into Kent Brockman delivering the news that the police are reporting that they are finding victims with 2 holes in their neck and drained of blood. It's happened multiple times, and the only clue that has been left at the scene is a black cape that says Dracula on it.
We think we're dealing with a supernatural being, most likely a mummy. As a precaution, I've ordered the Egyptian wing of the Springfield Museum destroyed.
And when we see footage of them destroying it, for some reason somebody's throwing the Mona Lisa on the fire.
It was stopping by in Springfield.
Lisa immediately gets what's going on, of course. She has to spell it out for the rest of the family, though. They're like, no, they're wrong. The creature they seek is the walking undead. Nosferatu. Das Vampire. Blank stares back. A vampire!
Lisa, vampires are make-believe, like elves, gremlins, and Eskimos.
And then Kent Brockman continues to announce that Burns has purchased the Springfield Blood Bank. And as Burns goes on camera, we see he actually has blood on his mouth. But he's announcing about how happy he is with this deal, and then when he notices the blood, he wipes it off his face with his finger, and he licks his finger right on camera. And Homer's great here as well. He's just like, business deal. No one seems to notice. Next up, we see the Simpsons are driving through the woods, and we see Homer say, "It sure was nice of Mr. Burns to invite us for a midnight dinner at his country home in Pennsylvania." Just so, to be fair, I remember as a kid getting that kind of confused. I didn't really understand what Transylvania was, and I was more familiar with Pennsylvania, so I can see why Homer was confused, but the delivery of the line, once again, by Dan Castellaneta is just fucking brilliant. The delivery makes the scene here. Lisa thinks things are a bit odd, but Marge just tells her to quit being so suspicious. And by the way, did everybody remember to wash their necks?
Like Mr. Burns asked.
Lisa, that's got you in trouble with the aliens.
That is true. Way back in the first Treehouse of Horror.
She started the whole war.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
How to
she
cook
kept
for 50
more dust.
humans.
And they could have lived like kings on that other planet. How sad.
She didn't learn her lesson.
Fucking Lisa.
I really like Homer's response to the "did you clean or remember to clean your necks" line, because he's like, "Sure did," and he pulls off this very disgusting oily rag off the back of his neck. This next little shot, I fucking love it, even though it's absolutely impossible, because they drive out to a castle that's sitting on, like, this sketchy pillar of land on an absolutely impossible road that has no support under it, and there's this giant image of Mr. Burns looking out over them as they arrive. It's actually really, really cool. It's one that, if I could get an animation cell, that'd be one that I would totally try to shoot for, just because I imagine it's probably super expensive for one, but it's just the type of scene that looks really, really cool just in that moment.
You say it's impossible, but have you ever seen Pennsylvania before?
That's true. I'm not familiar with the mysterious, spooky land that you speak of.
I've been there numerous times. There's a castle like that every half block.
I like when the Simpsons ring the doorbell and Mr. Burns responds,
"Welcome. Come in. Ah, fresh victims from my ever-growing army of the undead."
Sir, you have to let go of the button.
Son of a bit!
The door opens, the Simpsons walk in, and Burns appears out of thin air, and we see a very worn-looking Smithers approach. I think he's spoofing Igor in this situation. But another awesome visual gag, because Burns' shadow is out of sync the entire time with Mr. Burns, but at first, it's actually a little bit subtle. It's not super noticeable. But when Burns finally walks away after the dialogue, the shadow starts playing with a yo-yo, and it becomes very, very clear something is not quite right here. Lisa actually says, "Dad, do you notice anything strange?"
"Yeah, his hairdo looks so queer."
"I heard that!"
"It was the boy!"
His hair looks like two boobs, though.
It does kind of look like, it's almost like he's wearing a bra on his head. You're totally right. Later at the table, Smithers is serving them punch, and Homer's actually really excited, but Lisa screams out, "No, Dad, this is blood!"
Correction, free blood.
You can actually see on Homer's face, he's got a blood mustache now, because he's just really enjoying it because it's free. To be fair, free is always better.
Also, to be fair, we all know at this point that everyone outside of Lisa is already a vampire, so Homer would actually enjoy the free blood.
I don't know that we know that they're vampires yet, because they could have been
like as the audience we don't know,
later.
but like we know, like we actually know.
See, I could see that Homer could theoretically not be a vampire yet, because we know Marge is a vampire, but we don't necessarily know that Homer is. She could have gone after the kids first.
I don't know.
These are the things that'll keep you up at night.
Yeah.
If you say so.
Lisa knows what's up. She realizes they need to do something, so she fakes a spill, and she actually wipes some on her brother to get him to come along. But Bart's like, "Lise, even if Burns is a vampire, it's not like we're going to stumble upon his secret vampire lair." And he leans on a torch that absolutely, in fact, opens a secret lair, only in this case, it's just the secret laundry room.
Which is awesome.
That actually would be really kind of cool. You could, especially if you have like a bunch of laundry, you could just throw that shit in there and cover it up.
Until your wife gets home.
I'm kind of in that situation right now. You know, laundry basket is overfloweth. I don't want to deal with that.
Did you notice that Bart and Lisa were cleaning themselves off with a rag after Lisa spilled blood all over them and like they're spot clean?
I did not catch that, but that's pretty funny because blood definitely is not coming out that easy.
Yeah.
Or Kool-Aid.
Or Kool-Aid. Either one's bad.
Or chocolate.
Nothing gets chocolate out. But directly across from the hidden secret laundry room is a very well-announced secret vampire lair. It actually it says secret vampire lair, and it says no garlic, and it was actually supposed to have an arrow there, but there was a mistake in animation, and they ran out of either time or money to fix it. So they just went with it as is and figured it was good enough. But there was actually at one point supposed to be an arrow, making it even more obvious. They decide to go down and explore, and sure enough, they get into a room that's full of coffins, and it has a book in the center called Yes, I Am a Vampire by Montgomery Burns, forward by Steve Allen. Steve Allen was known for writing a ton of books and a ton of songs. At one point, they made a joke. He played a song once, and somebody said that he must have written that song while he was playing the one before it. But Steve Allen actually had was a really good sport about it, and he actually even ran into Dave Merkin, I believe it was, at one point, and told him how much he really enjoyed this joke.
Oh.
Which I know we always love anytime we hear of celebrities that like being made fun of on The Simpsons. It's way better reaction than fighting it. And I always think back to when Randy Marsh did Lord a few seasons back on South Park. I remember there's a announcement made by Lord where basically she was ecstatic. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got made fun of on one of my favorite shows of all time. And a lot of celebrities might have gone the other way, as they famously have with South Park in the past. And I just think it's a lot of fun when they embrace the fact that we all do stupid shit and sometimes things are funny. So let's just have some laughs about it.
I heard she also started singing that little bit that Randy sings as Lord, like at some of her shows too.
I am Lord, 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 Lord. I also love Bart's line here, too, because whenever they get into this room with all the coffins, Lisa's still kind of freaking out a little, but Bart's trying to play it cool, and he's like, no big deal. This is no different than Grandpa's rest home basement. Unfortunately, though, while Lisa's reading the book, an undead army starts to rise out of those coffins, and Bart's kind of doing some stuttering, and he's actually doing some, like, Three Stooges type of stuff, and Lisa's like, yeah, I've heard your Curly, I've heard your Motu. Not realizing that Bart is just too terrified to speak. And at the last moment, a hand comes across the book and they're able to barely make it away from this undead horde. They flee up the spiral staircase, but unfortunately again, about halfway up, Bart sees a lever that he just cannot resist pulling. He knows he shouldn't, but after all, when's he ever going to come back to this place?
What I want to know is, why didn't he see the sign for the super fun happy slide on the way down? Why does he only see it when his life's in danger and he actually stops to read it? It's so Bart.
But that does lead to the scene that Richie was talking about earlier, where he does pull the lever, and it's kind of funny because it turns into a slide, of course, and at first it seems Bart legitimately is having a great time, until he sees what's waiting for him at the bottom, and then his screams of joy turn to screams of terror, and it does seem like Bart is captured by the vampires.
Well, if it isn't little boy.
Lisa rushes back to her parents and tells them Burns is a vampire and he got Bart.
Why, Bart is right here.
Hello, Mother. Hello, Father. I missed you during my uneventful absence.
Oh, Lisa, you and your stories. Bart is a vampire. Beer kills brain cells. Now let's go back to that building thingy where our beds and TV is.
I had such a hard time not laughing while you were saying that, because that is the other contender for my favorite line in this series, and probably a third one coming up later too. There's some really, really funny stuff in this episode. David Merkin claimed, but again, this dude has such a dry sense of humor, I sometimes can't tell if he's being serious or if he's joking, but he claims that he actually had people call in and tell him, or write to him and say that they were struggling with alcohol addiction, and they were able to, or they used this quote as inspiration to quit.
Wow.
Which is actually, I mean, that's cool. If that can help people, get over something that's troubling them, I think that's actually pretty fucking awesome. I hope he is serious.
Well, considering how dark a lot of this stuff gets, I bet he's not lying about that.
He is known for his dark and surreal style. Back at home, we're in Lisa's bedroom, and we transition from a Dracula parody to more of a Lost Boys parody, because Bart, Milhouse, Martin, Ralph, and I believe it was Janie all show up as vampires floating outside of Lisa's second-story window. At first, they try to convince her to become a vampire by telling her how awesome it is. They get to stay up all night drinking blood, and if you tell them you're a vampire at the movie theater, they'll give you a free small soda. Very progressive for vampire rights, I must say.
Absolutely. Well, if you don't give them the free soda, they're going to bite you, so.
I like, though, Lisa protests, but Bart's like, Lisa, you don't really have a choice here. And he actually starts to attack her. You can see his fangs extend, and I agree with Brittany. He's adorable as a vampire, let's be real.
Let's also be real that this scene makes no sense, because Lisa did not invite them into her room.
He lives there.
Oh, he lives there, though, yeah.
That's not his natural habitat, though, because it falls under the dome of, damn it, Marge is the head vampire.
Well, and I do think, too, all the other vampires waited outside politely, as vampire rules suggest. Because Milhouse would have gone in if he had the opportunity.
Lisa!
Homer comes in to essentially quiet down his kids because he's trying to sleep. Bart, how many times have I told you not to bite your sis? Wait a minute, you actually are a vampire. I actually really like that Bart retracts his fangs in this scene, too. I thought that was a really cool bit of animation.
Quick, we have to kill the boy!
This grandpa running in the room, and Marge asks him, how did you know he's a vampire?
Vampire.
He's a vampire? Ah!
This is obviously a very familiar joke. We saw this last season during the zombie horde. He's a zombie? Talking about Ned Flanders and whatnot. However, as Conan O'Brien points out on the commentary, it's still funny, and the check gets mailed either way.
It's hard not to love Conan.
It really is. He's great. This is that scene I was talking about earlier. It's actually another really cool bit of animation where Bart turns into a bat and he flies away.
My notes say Bart Bat, so cute. Aw.
Aw. I think I have an idea of what your style might be. Marge comes in the room and says, Homer, we have to do something. Today he's drinking people's blood. Tomorrow he could be smoking.
The only way to save Bart is to kill the head vampire, Mr. Burns.
Kill my boss? Do I dare live out the American dream, Daddy? If you got it, you know it. Don't worry about it, Richie. Immediately we cut to them walking down the stairs back at the castle, and we get a great callback joke because as Homer passes the super fun happy slide, he also really wants to pull that lever. But Lisa tells him, no, Dad, you can't do that. And Homer says, aw, I guess killing will be fun enough.
See, Homer noticed the lever on the way down.
That's true. Should have, I guess Bart was distracted arguing with his sister. Who knows?
They went in through a different door.
Oh, there you go. It has 2 giant spiral staircases, Richie. Duh.
How foolish of me.
When Grandpa came in earlier to kill the boy before he even realized he was a vampire, he had brought a wooden stake and mallet, and Lisa actually took this with them because, of course, they're going to have to drive that stake through his heart to kill him. We see Homer whacking away at this stake. Take that, you vile fiend! Dad? That's his crotch. Which is contender number 3 for my favorite line in this episode. And again, I think it has a lot to do with the delivery on that one, because Yeardley Smith just killed that in terms of how great the pause was perfect, the way she says it was perfect, and it was just a great scene.
It's said to where like he had to have done that on purpose.
I also like, even after he does get the stake in the right place and kill him, Burns actually like turns to dust, but then reanimates for just a moment long enough to say, oh, you're fired, and then dies again. And finally, we are back in the Simpsons kitchen. Lisa's glad to have everything back to normal, but then Grandpa comes in and says he's a vampire, but almost immediately his teeth fall out, including his fangs. He ends up bumping into the refrigerator and falling over and complaining about how the cape is giving him a rash. As bad of a vampire as he might be, it still confuses Lisa because, I mean, they killed the head vampire, so how come he's a vampire? And Bart points out, no, Lisa, we're all vampires. And that's when Lisa realizes, oh, her father must be the head vampire.
Why did she assume that?
Yeah, that's sexist as fuck, right?
Especially coming from Lisa.
Yeah, she should be the most progressive of all the Simpsons.
But again, her father was drinking blood in a previous scene.
I love Marge here, though, because, first of all, again, great animation. Terrifying Marge is actually quite terrifying. And what she says is also quite funny, because when it's revealed, no, I'm the head vampire. What, you don't think I do anything outside of the house?
Yeah.
You have a life outside of this house, you know.
And as things are getting really, really dark for Lisa, to the point where she's surrounded by her family, who are all now vampires, for whatever reason, everybody stops, turns to the camera, and declares, Happy Halloween, everybody! Before they break out into song and dance in a very Peanut style, complete with Santa's little helper doing a dance on his 2 hind legs, and Milhouse playing a little tiny piano.
And that's how you end any kind of holiday special. It's Charlie Brown style right there.
I love this. I love how it's not the right holiday, but it still works so well. I love that it starts snowing in the middle of their kitchen. I think that it's really fun when we get to review these Halloween episodes because all of the rules go out the window. The limited rules that they do have to stick to in regular episodes, they can completely destroy those and just do whatever the fuck they want. And they do, and they make it really, really funny most of the time. That does bring us into the closing credits of the show, however. It's also a lot of fun on the end, though, because it's the Addams Family theme, but it's done in the Munsters TV show style, with the, like, electric harp thing that they use, or I think it's actually electric organ, excuse me, but either way, it's a really fun exit movement. I want to be able to identify them, we'll say that.
You missed one line. They're walking down the stairs, and Marge is like, I just wish we could have got a babysitter for Maggie. Like, they're going to kill vampires, but honestly, you can't get a babysitter. Nobody will babysit The Simpsons.
Well, we know they've had bad luck with that in the past. I think, though, we both think that Maggie's going to be just fine. In fact, if shit goes down, you want Maggie there to protect you.
I mean, she shot Mr. Burns once and hit Russ Cargill over the head with a giant rock in the movie, so...
She's absolutely the most useful Simpson to have.
She's
my first
force to be reckoned with.
Oh, nice! I see what you did there.
Most recently, a demon.
That's right.
True.
She's possessed this last Treehouse of Horror. Totally correct. That does bring us to the end of Treehouse of Horror 4. But Brittany, was there anything else that you wanted to point out or talk about on this episode?
Well, like, it's in November now. Like, most of the Treehouse of Horrors are in November because, like, the baseball bullshit. But this is one of the 4 that was actually in October.
Oh, that's a fun fact. Yeah, all the ones that we've done so far have been in October, but I did know there was something to do with the baseball contract coming up, so it'll be interesting to see when these start getting pushed to.
Very, very good.
So, Brittany, let me ask you this. If you had to only pick one, and obviously you can do whatever, but if you could only pick one character or moment or thing from this specific Treehouse of Horror to include on that sleeve of yours, what would it be?
Well, I know that Ned Flanders was going on the sleeve with the goat legs.
All right, that's a good one.
That's from this season. Yeah, and then I might do Elvis accepted on one of the tombstones in the graveyard.
That's a pretty funny one. I like that as well.
And it's Memphis, we're like Elvis capital here.
Oh yeah, I didn't even make that connection, but totally, that makes total sense. Absolutely. Richie, what about you or that book of yours? Anything else you want to talk about for Treehouse of Horror 4?
Well, my book, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, did point out that in the second story on the bus, Uter is only referred to as that foreign exchange student by everybody other than Bart. So they never actually mention him by name until Bart says it. So I thought that was interesting. Cool. I wonder if it took a while for them to come up with a name or whatnot, or they weren't sure that he was going to be around, so they didn't want to make him too prominent. Besides that, on a personal note, I just want to say, who does not want to take a trip down the super happy fun slide?
I would have a really hard time not pulling that lever.
And then my last thought here, it's the Simpsons might actually be vampires. Just like we say Ned might actually be the devil all the time, but the Simpsons haven't aged in 30 years, so we've had flash forwards, but it would explain why they haven't aged if they were actually vampires.
And their body heals really, like, quickly.
Homer is unbreakable.
Exactly.
This is definitely better evidence you're providing than you have so far for Beastmaster Bart, so I'll give you that. Though, he did turn into a bat in this episode, so damn.
Yeah.
But that doesn't count as controlling animals. I don't know. That's getting thinner
He's
by the
a
moment.
Beastmaster. I was just saying, I like the thought of them not aging being a response to them being vampires.
No, that's actually a lot of fun. Only thing, I guess this could be considered for or against. I know there are times we see the Simpsons in the mirror, but now that I think about it, a lot of those times they're seeing something that isn't actually there. For instance, Homer seeing himself with abs.
Yep.
Or hair. The only other thing I want to point out before we get out of here is I mentioned earlier they spoofed a lot of real-life artists in the gallery sequences. And the first one, as they opened up for the Devil short, it was Giorgio de Chirico, Vincent van Gogh, Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, and M.C. Escher. And also Edvard Munch. And then right before the last sequence with Mr. Burns, they went to Jacques-Louis David. Wow, I did that wrong. Jacques-Louis David, Picasso again, René Magritte, and Cassius Marcellus Coolidge, which are all names that only like two of mean anything to me, but for all of you art lovers out there, they hit the spectrum. And finally, I already talked a little bit about it being Conan's final appearance. One thing I did want to point out, I meant to say earlier, I laughed my ass off when I was looking through the credits because I guess they must pick their own. I'm actually really curious to know how that works. But Conan's spooky credit was just, watch Conan O'Brien. A little plug for himself. Right on the way out, a man after my own heart. Always push your shiz. So, speaking of pushing your shiz, Brittany, talk a little bit more about Memphis or anything else you've got going on over there in Memphis, and tell everybody where they can find you and talk to you about The Simpsons or your sleeve or whatever else online.
Okay, I'm Brittany, beware for Brittany Braddock. On Twitter, I'm at theparty420, Instagram _ at theparty420. Also on Tapped Out. Y'all can play Tapped Out with me, theparty420. Memphis, the t-shirts and music stuff is memphis.com. And then one cool thing I'm doing in Memphis is I marry people. I'm like an ordained minister. And so I got a wedding coming up. Midtownminister.com is where you can find me on that. And I'm dressing up as Elvis and like marrying some people.
That's fantastic. You definitely have to post pictures of that. You know what? I totally forgot. I meant to make fun of you for this just a little bit. I have to pick, but I see you tweeting all the time, #BB. I think you might have a problem, and this is part podcast appearance, part intervention, because I think you have a reality television addiction, Brittany. I really do.
It's very entertaining. Americans are hilarious. I don't know. Yes, I watch Big Brother like obsessively. I really wanted to be on Big Brother. And I started working out just so I could get on Big Brother, and I've now lost like over 100 pounds because I think that like I was even gonna get on national TV, like being as heavy as I was. And so like I went through a whole like body transformation just so I can like attempt to audition to be on CBS.
Well, that's really cool. Are you still going through with the application process, or is that something that you still aspire to do?
Yeah, I send it in like every year.
Oh, very cool. Well, hey, if you're listening, support Brittany getting on Big Brother. For those of you that are reality fans, I make fun, but at the end of the day, I'm a wrestling fan, and as it's been pointed out to me, it's kind of like the original reality television. So I'm very much a hypocrite, and I know it.
So we're gonna say support Bob, Brittany on Big Brother.
Oh, I like that #Bob. We're gonna make that go viral, as they say.
Big B, little O, Big B, Big B.
Lots of big B's.
That should help you get on television, I've been told. But before we get out of here, Richie, go ahead and tell them where they can find you online.
Well, first of all, anybody that watches reality TV at any point in their lives, shame on you. I mean, I can't believe the kind of people that would do that.
Tila Tequila, you fucking...
Before she was a Nazi. Hey, your wife watched it with me.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that kind of
makes it so much worse.
Bummer on the whole thing, yeah.
It was already a bummer on the whole thing, sir. It was already a bummer, and it just multiplied.
She was going after other chicks. I thought it was fun, and so did your wife.
Fair enough.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWiz_Kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at BestDarnDiddly. That's DIDDLY.
And that is also going to work on Instagram. As for me, I'm at MrMostDaysOff. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where I'm starting a companion series to this show called Behind the Diddly, where I'll give you just a little weekly update of what is going on the show since we do record so far ahead. So please go and check that out and subscribe to the channel. I've got so few followers right now, I can't even make a custom URL. So that's goal number 1, is I just got to get to triple digits. So help me out with that, trying to build that channel up.
Oh, also don't forget to send us your favorite description or definition of the term Rear Admiral. Give it to us Rear Admiral style. You can send that to us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all Best Darn Diddly on all those. Or also bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. Try to win some stickers, guys.
Richie and I want to give a big thank you to Brittany for joining us today to talk about The Simpsons. A lot of fun talking with her. As always, we also want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. The WizKid and I look forward to being back with you again next week when we are going to be covering Marge on the Lam.
Thank goodness this podcast is over with. I'm ready for some beer. Miles, let's go back to that building thingy where our beds and TV is.
Grab a cold one, and until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Rising from the depths of a state called Michigan, two inebriated dorks prepare their plan for intergalactic domination. Mixing their extensive knowledge of geek culture with their insatiable thirst for alcohol, these two man-children bring you a show like you've never heard before. It will tell you tales from faraway lands and have you questioning their taste in beer. But make no mistake, friend, for the best coverage of your favorite comics, films, and TV shows, there's no better source for you to get your fix. So listen up, strap in, and prepare yourself as Jake and Tom conquer the world.